Hi, and welcome to my shop. Today you're going to see a partial video of a captive ring goblet that I started for my nephew Takeo and his bride Lindsey. Unfortunately, I was running out of time and I didn't finish filming the complete process, but there's enough video that you might get some really good hints on how to proceed with turning captive rings. So please like and subscribe and enjoy the following wood turning video. Thank you. Hi, I'm Kathleen and welcome back to my shop. Today we're going to work on captive rings. Well, I'm going to work on captive rings and hopefully you will stay and watch the whole video. Captive rings are exactly what they say. They are turned from the same piece of wood that you make your object from. So this was a sample I turned a few days ago. I used my skew chisel and it didn't really turn out the way I wanted to. I used to be really good at making captive rings, but that was over a decade ago and I haven't done any since. My nephew Takeo and his bride-to-be Lindsey have moved up their wedding and I only have 2 weeks to make a goblet for them. So I am cheating a little and I've borrowed a captive ring tool from my friend Christine. So this one was bought at Lee Valley and she also made a few little ones. So I have these as well. I don't know if you can see them, but they will help make the smaller rings. So this is a sample goblet and I practiced a little bit with the tools after I got them from Christine. So yesterday I made this baby rattle and it took no time at all with these tools. So basically there are 6 rings on this rattle and 2 rings were made from one section. So these 2 rings were made from this section, these 2 from the middle, and then the 2 end ones. So I know I can make really nice rings with these 3 tools. And I'm going to be using this piece of dogwood to turn a goblet and captive rings. This piece of dogwood has been drying for years, so it's completely dry. As far as I can tell, there are no cracks. I will be turning it between centers to make a foot. It's a little bit long for the goblet that I want to make, but I'd rather have it too long than too short. I can always shorten it when it's on the lathe. When you have a piece that you're turning between centers, it's always good to have it very tight on both ends. And one way to tell is putting a little bit of sawdust on the side here so that when you tighten the footstock and you turn the handle to bring the live end closer, you will see that it is moving back. Once it starts moving back, you know you're as tight as you can go. Just before you start turning, make sure that your tool rest is clear from the piece of wood so nothing catches. If it may look fine here, but if I move it too close, it'll get stuck. So make sure that you're all prepared to go. I'm going to be using my roughing gouge to make it nice and round. Because the piece is quite long, I'm going to do part of it. I don't want to fall off. I don't want my tool to fall off the tool rest. So I'm going to do this first part and then move down towards the other end. The piece is mostly round now. There's still a little bit of bark left to remove, and it's definitely longer than I need. What I'm going to do is make a foot on both sides, and that way if I cut let's say 8 inches, 8 or 8.5 inches for the goblet, I still have enough left to make a little bowl, and I'll have a little foot all ready for it to mount. I've started my foot on this side, and I'm using my parting tool to make it flush at the end, and then starting my foot. I'm making it about 1.5 widths of the parting tool, just so that there's enough grip in the chuck. The chuck is about 2 inches, what it needs to hold. You don't want it less than 2 inches because it won't hold that. And what I've done is, using my calipers and my little handy dandy measurement, this is 2 inches, and my foot is just a little bit too big. My calipers aren't going through. So I have to turn a little bit more off, and then it'll be ready to remove from the centers and put it on a chuck. The piece is mounted on the one-way chuck, and it is much longer than I need. So what I'm going to do is part off about these 2.5, 3 inches. And what that'll do is give me room for a little bowl and leave me enough to do a goblet. I've parted most of it off, and the best way to get a clean cut is now to use a saw to get that little nub off. If you use your parting tool to go all the way through, you might actually tear the wood, and in this case it wouldn't matter, but if you want a nicer finish on a bottom or a top of something, then cutting it with a saw is the best way to do it. So this is the saw that I'm using. I'm just going to remove the rest so that the saw doesn't get caught. So here's the piece that I cut off. It's all ready to be remounted to make a little bowl. I have the foot ready, and here is the goblet. I'm going to be using my big spindle gouge for this and see how it goes. Otherwise, I'll just go back to my bowl gouge, which is one of my favorite tools. Even though the piece is mounted in the chuck, it is quite long, and anything over 6 inches should be supported. So I've brought the tail stock up, and the live center is nice and snug so that it will give it the support it needs. I wouldn't want this piece to go flying. It would cause a lot of damage. So once it's time to hollow the inside, I might have to find a different way of supporting it. But in the meantime, until I get most of the bark off and a little bit of a better shape, this live center will hold it in place. I'm going to attempt to hollow it out and start the goblet. I don't have anything steadying this, and I'll be able to tell by the noise or the vibration if I should find my steady rest. But for now, I'm just going to start hollowing this and make the inside of the goblet. So this is the goblet so far. I have the inside all hollowed out and smooth to 150. I'm going to sand it a little bit more. I have the basic shape. Here is where all the rings are. I'm going to make 2 and the base. So this is it so far, but it is time for me to go feed the dog. And I'll come back tomorrow and finish this off. It's the next day, and I've sanded the goblet to 400. Now the pith is running through here and on the inside. So what I did was I put a little drop of CA glue just to seal it off. And now I'm going to turn some rings using this part. Just before I start the rings, I'm actually going to make the neck or this top part a little bit smaller. It'll be the width that I want the whole stem to be. I will also turn this down a little bit. You want the rings to be smaller than the bigger portion of the goblet so that they don't fly off. So I'm going to make 2 rings and then the base. I'm using my parting tool to make the part that I'm going to use for the ring. Hear that? I didn't have my tool rest proper and I was hitting the goblet part. So always check before you start anything, make sure your tool rest is in the proper position. Doesn't look like anything's damaged. Phew. This is going to be where the ring is. I'm just going to round it off before I part it up. I'm going to sand it a little bit. For this first ring, I'm going to be using this captive tool ring from Lee Valley. It's been honed and sharpened, not with the grinder, but just with a fine file. When you're doing your captive ring, turn the speed down a little bit. You don't need to go as fast as you were when you were doing the rest of the goblet. You're going to take the tool and go in from side to side, slowly and gently. And the grooves that you make are going to slowly meet in the middle. Once they meet in the middle, this ring is going to get loose. You're going to see it. It may actually get caught up on the wood on either side, but that's an easy fix. So let's see what that looks like. So the ring has separated, as you can see, but it's being held just by this little piece of wood there. So I will just turn that off without breaking the ring and show you how I do the second ring. I thought I had the video turned on to show you how I removed the excess part. I just used the captive tool ring again, and I just went a little bit deeper and removed it. So here's my ring. Now if I want to do my second one, I need to put this out of the way. So I'm just going to actually use tape and tape it to the bottom of the goblet. So the ring is taped out of the way, and I'm going to turn this middle part away to continue down to the stem. Now when I did the rattle, this part, I actually turned a second ring out of it. So those are what these little rings are. So out of one slice of wood, I was able to make 2 rings. I don't want to make that for this goblet just because I want both rings to symbolize Takeo and Lindsey, and I want them both to be pretty much the same size. And this is where the video ends, but the goblet did make it in time for the wedding, and both Takeo and Lindsey said they really liked it. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for bloopers. So today is going to be blah, blah. Yeah, it's going to be blah, blah, blah. And I'm supporting it with the live end. I can't remember what the name of this is, while I'm supporting it this way. It's a goblet with 1 or more captive rings that I want to give as a wedding present to my nephew Lindsey and his bride-to-be, my nephew Takeo and his bride-to-be Lindsey. Oh my God, it's going to be a weird day. Maybe I should turn tomorrow.